All right, welcome to Voice for Equity. I have with me today Dr. Christina Grant from DC, State Superintendent. We should probably talk about that a little bit because I didn't think that DC was a state, but you have this interesting title. I'm thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you for all that you're doing at the national and local level. Let's have a chat today, Christina. And you're my namesake, so hey, I'm
I
pretty excited
know.
about that.
I was like, Christina, we've got to be great friends. It's a good name. So yeah, DC is not a state. We should be a state. So let me say that the fight to become the 51st state continues. But fun fact, the United States has 50 states. We have US territories. DC exists through a congressional charter, and we have the Department of Defense. And all those entities have this role that's either a commissioner of education, a secretary of education, or a state superintendent. And in each of these instances, we serve as the fiscal pass-through for the federal government. We oversee all federal grants, programs, large amounts of compliance. We are the policy shop of Washington, D.C. Every single school, district, charter, private, independent, if you are educating a child in the district in a policy stance and in most instances of fiduciary stance, there is a pass through to your state education agency for DCPS, which is the District of Columbia's public schools, which we call traditional. And for all of our public charters, we do all oversight, monitoring, attendance, discipline, childhood vaccinations, what we're currently navigating right now. We really do function as the state education agency for the district. And it's a great joy to serve in the role. What makes DC different is we also oversee all of our early childhood investments in infrastructure. We have over 500 facilities that run through a fully aligned program, both completely subsidized, hybrid, and private. We have a full accountability framework, evaluations, and funding structures to ensure that even for our littlest learners, they are having access to quality educators and quality facilities. We make big bets in early childhood because we fundamentally believe that from birth through kindergarten, those are critical developmental years for our children. And there's a lot that can get accomplished before they walk into their compulsory ages. State Education Agency also oversees all of our higher education institutions through our licensing commission. And we have deep investments in adult education. And so I always say, I'm like, is someone learning in the district? Are they eating school lunch in the district? Are they on a school bus in the district? Because we oversee transportation as well. All that work passes through the agency, and DC is larger than some states. And so I'll end with where I began. Like our fight to statehood continues because we serve currently just under 100,000 K-12 children in our public and public charter schools, under 5,000 in our early learning space. But it's a large set of residents we got to get it right for every day. And it's an honor to serve. And truly, Christina, thank you for this platform. I'm a big believer in the tellings of stories. And it really means a lot that you take the time to tell our stories, your stories, uh, because we are out here doing great work for our kids, and it means a lot that you would take this time.
Oh, thank you, Christina. I'm thrilled to have you on the show because there's so many exciting things that have happened in DC, but also you personally have had an interesting career path. And I think I joked around the fact that, you went through New York, you went through Philly, now you're in DC. You must love getting hit over the head a couple of times from the political front because those are three very political spaces. But you just named some of the hotbed policy issues that you're working on in DC that also are critical policy issues elsewhere, early childhood, school choice, access, the various school designs, the transportation, healthcare, all of that is part of what we work on in education. I am wondering what you would say today, now sitting in the seat in DC, you've brought and, from your other spaces of learning and how you're thinking maybe differently about some of those policy issues. What have been some of the transitions in your thinking?
Huh. It's interesting. First, I thought you were going to say I enjoyed Amtrak because I did this I-95 thing. We can't leave out Delaware and Connecticut. Those are places I've had good time doing great work. You know, One, I'm a New Yorker, and so that is like deep in who I am. I am the daughter of, two middle class, working class folks, which is a construct that we don't often grapple with. But I very much grew up solidly middle class, but my father was an auto mechanic and my mom worked in a hospital. She was a food service worker. She was at the top of the food chain, but still working class folk, and education really is the deciding factor in my life, like flat out. My parents were unapologetic about how important school was. They very much believed in the social contract that, like, we send our child there. If you grew up Southern like me, my father was like, you do anything to embarrass this house. Like, I was very much a child that if I came home with a 95, my father would tell me to stay in the house until I figured out where the other 5 points were. So like that's the mission that was given. And I do this work. I arrived, I was a first year teacher in Harlem, and having grown up 20 miles away from where I was teaching. And I graduate from a high performing high school, right? I graduated from Hempstead High School. It's still not a high performing high school. And even in that, the kids that I was teaching had gotten less than what I had received, right? But at least in my high school career, I had access to dual enrollment. I actually went to the college that I did my dual enrollment classes at. I was on the debate team. I was in National Honor Society, right? Like, even in knowing that I didn't get the best high school education, I still showed up in Harlem and I was like, oh, we got a lot of work to do, because it's dangerous to give a child a diploma and not have that diploma be worth the paper it's written on. Like, that's what we're fighting against. Because then that child goes into career, that child goes into college, and they're not ready. And then when you're not ready, the voices that you tell yourself, they become louder. And then it becomes harder to beat and take the next step to push yourself further. And so the policy implications of the spaces that I've danced in are all a direct result of like that lived experience, that I am a child that went to private early childhood, public elementary school, private middle school, public high school. And they're all decisions that my parents were playing out. And I don't know that they were calling it school choice, but I know that they were like, we got to do the best we can do in the zip code that we live in to educate our child. And so if we have enough money to send her to private early childhood and we can get a subsidy, we're going to do that. Okay, this public elementary school up the street is great and she can walk there and I know the principal and I believe, all right, we're going to do that, right? And I remember when my father told me, like, we can send you to private high school or we can send you to college, but we can't send you to both. There's like not enough money to run that race for both. That's how I ended up in public high school. And you know what I mean? And so then the implications of policy continue to play out. Had I not had access to dual enrollment at that dual enrollment partner, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today, because going to college for me was always front of mind. And in 11th grade, I literally was just bopping around my college campus. When it got time to apply to college, I walked over to admissions and I was like, hey, I'd like to stay here. What does that look like? And I had a lot of at-bats at college before I was paying tuition, right? And so some of the policy conversations are quite controversial, especially as we evolve into conversations around ESAs and vouchers. But every single day, parents are actually just trying to like play the hand that they were dealt for their children, like to the highest hand of playing. And I don't know how to play poker, so I can't take that analogy further. But my
That's
working.
interesting, Christina, because when you think about some of the conditions that you talked about,
Mhm.
two parents at home, very
Mhm.
supportive,
Mhm.
have an understanding of how to leverage and maximize what's available in your community, in your schools, knowing the principal down the street at the elementary school, understanding dual college credits. You're amongst the elite when you think about the typical experience of students of color in this nation.
And
And
that's where the work of equity kicks in,
right,
because, that is why our existence as leadership in this work matters. Because when I became a first year teacher in Harlem, it is when it kicked into me that I operate in immense privilege. And so, how do I create educational opportunities for children who don't have a mom? When I was started high school, my mom took off work every day the first week of school because I was in general education classes, because no one transcribed my transcript. I went to a Catholic middle school, so I had like E's and A's that did not it didn't translate. And my mother was like, I know there are other classes in this school. I know there are. And she is coming home crying every day because she's done this work before. And my mother did not have colorful language. Like, I want to be clear. She was like, I know that there's something better for my child, but two-parent household, mom could take PTO time, could show up at the school every single day. In that first week, they were abundantly clear. And then they had called my elementary school and they were like, oh no, her mom's crazy. Like, she will, you're not gonna run a play on her. Right?
absolutely.
If you don't have that ecosystem playing out in your life, it is our responsibility to make sure that our children are showing up to environments every single day where they're loved, where they're supported, where parents can have access to the school community, even if they can't take off, even if they can't, parents, I do believe that parents are the first teacher, but I also believe that we have to make sure that parents deeply understand what they deserve, what they have rights for, and how they navigate that out in the best interest of their child. And so, yeah,
And yet, Christina, we know that
Mhm.
schools, we know this research, right? We know kids need the differentiated support. We know that conditions in community are varied, and not every community looks the same, not every household looks the same. And yet we talk about equity of access and we talk about public education being that access for all kids in every community. And yet when we go into many school systems, they end up looking the same. And we
Mhm.
have students who then struggle and come up against, there's a way in which you kind of have to play the game, right? There's a construct, right, of public education and a construct of schooling that you have to fit in. But if you come from conditions that make it hard to fit in, it's still your issue as the child or the family. And so I love to hear your thoughts around, having been in these different states and these different school systems. How do you think now about equity of access from the perspective of diversifying school designs, diversifying governance, diversifying what public education means today, especially as we think about the fact that we are at 54% students of color, and our students of color are still not accessing college at the rate they should be. In fact, we still see a college system that is predominantly white in this nation. We still see struggling students, even when they have socioeconomic means. So there's a lot of complexity to this, and I'm constantly thinking about, where are we in our school design work? Where are we in our access work?
Well, I mean, one, I would invite you to come visit DC. We are knee deep in the process of reimagining high school. Every DCPS school is going through aggressive redesign, primarily because we want to make sure that children are showing up at schools that they want to be in, that have designs that align with their interests. And so what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to be college ready? What do those things tangibly mean to the life of a ninth grader? Because that's who we're trying to capture. And then what I would say practically, all of those things you have said are true, and we cannot allow ourselves to be unrelenting on things that we know still matter. Like going to college still matters. And so when we think about setting up post-secondary pathways, again, here in the district, we want our students to be college and career ready, because what was true for me is going to be largely true for a lot of students. You're going to have to work and go to school. And I think we have to normalize and socialize that reality, and the importance of the credential in terms of life outcomes. But in the day-to-day of the work, we are still in the process of recovering from a global pandemic. So one, we are going to have to talk locally and nationally about the short-term and long-term impacts of COVID, not just the actual virus, but what did it mean to be in extreme isolation? What does it mean to reset yourself, your social emotional awareness? We've just released our social emotional draft standards are posted, and so please go read them and give us feedback. But all of those things are the through line of what's playing out in the life of an individual child. And so in a lot of respects, we have to do a new resetting with communities around, again, where I start, just how critically important education is. And when you drill down on who has access or who is furthest away from opportunity, we have to be unapologetic in aligning those resources to those students first. And that's not just, it's surface level to say black and white. It is so much, it is so much more nuanced and needs to be focused along the lines of SES, ability, all of the different aspects of what it means to be a diverse learner, things you can see, things you cannot see. And I am proud that in DC, we are laser-like focused on ensuring access is delivered along those lines, and not arguably how we were educated, and like, if you got it, you got it, and if you didn't, you didn't. And I lead with like certain dynamics of my family structure that scream privilege, but could talk deeply about the layers and layers and layers of trauma and things that were existing, that just like, because I came to school every day on fire, ready to learn, no one ever asked about a lot of other things that were going on in my home. And like, we have to ensure our teachers are trained to do the teaching and learning. But if you were to ask me, there's a massive need of an overlay for social work, guidance counselors, behavioral health therapists, et cetera, that actually get at the other level of what is hugely inequitable in this system, is access to that level of care that actually produces educational outcomes for students. And that is a 2-generation issue. That's, to me, the policy conversations on choice and governance and about all of those things, we need to be having aggressive, equity-driven conversations around the social supports that certain students have access to and others don't, and how that aligns to their actual academic outcomes. And I don't know, I'll be really brief. I operate in a system that is governed through mayoral control. I believe in mayoral control. I don't know how we would have navigated the pandemic without mayoral control. This is my third system that I've led in that exists through mayoral control. And we have the right sets of checks and balances in and across DC that allow us to push our system faster. And across the metrics that we, hold ourselves sacred to, our graduation rate is up. We have the highest enrollment in Washington, DC that we've ever had. Our test scores are back. We are seeing increases for the first time since the pandemic in ELA and math. And in every single school, our growth data is stronger than our growth data from 2018-19, right? Like, that whole sentence is possible because we've had the same mayor for 9 years, and we will have that same person in office for 12 years. And that laser-like focus on education and on leadership, that is a system that I strongly believe in. And that is also how you can exist in a system that has a strong public traditional system and a true strong set of charter options that then truly do get to designs that parents get to choose academic environments that meet the needs of their students. We've just released our report card where every single family can look at every single school and understand, like, we have a school where every single student must pass AP exams in order to graduate. And then we have full Montessori programs. We have schools that exist that are true college ready. And then we have CTE schools that have deep investments in career options, and parents and students being able to have that level of choice is what makes a system robust, and it's what allows a system to thrive. And also, we still know we have a lot of work to do.
Interesting, Christina, is the description that you shared about the governance structure of mayoral control design. It's a model that works in some places and a model that doesn't work in others.
You do this work in community with individuals who do believe that we can serve our children well. And I have only operated in spaces where folks were willing to say, all right, how could we do it differently? What's the biggest lesson over, I don't know, 20, 25 years is like, to do the work with community takes longer, but if the community owns the work, it will stick, and then children will succeed. If not, the community will be sitting all its time fighting the thing that everyone is agreeing would be helpful for the child. But how did you achieve the goal? Did you achieve it by taking the power, or did you achieve it by doing it and helping people understand that this is their power too?
Now, community changes, right?
Mhm.
We see that, whether that's because there are a change of political forces, there are some situational changes. We just had a pandemic that threw everyone off, right, in terms of how community was thinking about a variety of societal issues, not just education, but engagement and health and the elderly and just care for community. And so who do you turn to? How do you think about your network so that as those ebbs and flows happen with who's supportive and when community may not be as cohesive, that you keep yourself focused on the right work, the good work, the work that's focused on kids, and feel that you're not working in isolation during some of those times that we know happens to superintendents, right? We go in and out of these networks of support. How do you keep your network of trusted folks solid? How do you design that network around you?
Yeah, I mean, leadership is lonely, and I think that's something that people have to like sit in. Everyone's not gonna be your fan every single day. But to your question, I do surround myself with, multiple group of people who have known me my whole life. And so like they aren't captivated by the superintendent. They know Chrissy, and very few people know her, but those are the people who they will laugh with you, they will come sit in your house with you. They don't watch the news when someone's talking bad about you, and they don't let you watch it either. And so that's one group. The other is I really do ground myself with a set of folks who have done this leadership work in a multitude of places and spaces. Their careers are far more advanced than mine, but they are the ones that I can humble myself and say, this is the problem. I've never seen it before, or this is the problem. I'm grappling with how I feel about it. What did you learn while you had to do it? I worked in Connecticut. And so the second you said Hartford, I said, oh, right. Because I fully understand the work that you've done and what you've achieved. And so being humble and remaining vulnerable and surrounding yourself with people that you will listen to, that can sit you down and say, like, actually, no, you're wrong on this issue. You are not right. You are leading through a limited view of X, Y, and Z, and like, go talk to these other people. And then last but certainly not least, like, I am blessed that I have a lot of women who have been superintendents, who are currently superintendents, that there's a whole other level of stuff associated with this work that I can go to them and say, whoa, like, every aspect of my identity comes into play every single time the light turns on. And how do they grapple with it? So you can run the race a little further. Last but certainly, I will just walk into a school on any given day of the week and just like watch kids do really funny things, or sit in the classroom and find joy. You pass a requirement around literacy training, and then you go sit in a classroom of a teacher who's just finished the training and they're on fire about this new tool in their toolkit, and that drowns out the noise of the people who hate the literacy training, right? So you have to be super focused on what feeds you, what information you take in, who you let speak to you, who you let speak over you, because a lot of the leadership work is a mind game. And so those are 4 or 5 different places and spaces I go to find joy when things get rough. And it's not easy work. So you need
No,
to know
there's
that
nothing easy
coming
about
in.
it. But
Yeah.
it is so incredibly fulfilling, and those moments where you are in sync, right? In a
Mhm.
network with others, and you're in sync because you're there for one another and you're supporting one another is incredibly powerful. And it's a wonderful space to be in. I love serving as a superintendent. I encourage others to serve in this role, especially, being very, careful to go after people who really are focused on kids and understand that there's tremendous sacrifice in this, but there's also a lot that you gain as a person, as a leader, as a woman,
Mhm.
also in this space as we lead this nation's school system. So I want to thank you for leading. I want to thank you for being a voice nationally. We will continue to follow you. You're doing and have been doing tremendous work. And I think in this nation, we have just incredible superintendents leading today.
And I think you had asked that question, I would end there, like that sentence right there. All across this country, we have great people every single day who are trying to get it right for our children. We need to rally around the solutions more than we rally around the problems, and keep our children who are most marginalized at our center, because they fully deserve this thing we call the American dream. It needs to play out in their lives for the betterment of all of us.
Absolutely. As a fellow New Yorker and for me, a South Bronx girl,
Yeah, I'm
I
the
want to,
Bronx from the Grand Concourse.
yes, yes.
Oh,
I want to thank Dr. Christina Grant, State Superintendent of DC, for joining us today. And I will see you all over the nation as you continue to make your way in various spaces and meetings. So thank you.
thanks.